How does an IP lawyer get into agriculture?
Realizing that the work in commercial law has to come from services and the production of products in the economy. And then obviously my exposure to the behemoth of production, that is South African production industry.
We are joined by Mr. Douglas Gichuki, Chairperson, Kasarani Pork Producers Cooperative. Thank you so very much for making time.
So everybody wants to go to university and become an accountant, a doctor, a pharmacist, a journalist, anything other than agri-production.
Just folding that up to the United Nations SDGs, SDG 8 is on decent work and economic growth. Take us to a point where I'm a young person. I want to get into agriculture or whatever it is. Where do I start?
The most powerful ally to getting ahead is a sober mind, a determination that you're going to get forward. The season of luck, if you can call it that, finds us on our way. It didn't find us in bed. It found us on our way towards somewhere.
Hi, Douglas.
Good morning, John.
Yeah, it's good to see you, Douglas.
Thank you for having us.
Yes.
Yeah.
How does an IP lawyer get into agriculture? Maybe you want to walk us through that particular journey.
Okay. So I left law school in 2009, and I immediately headed for my master's in the UK to study IP law. And so IP law is intellectual property law that protects broadly three things. It protects patents, which are innovations. It protects expressions, which is copyright, or original expressions, where that's copyright. And then you've got another branch that is trademarks, which protects brands. And it's affiliated to another area that affiliated to trademark law called geographical indications. Some of the more famous geographical indications include tequila and champagne. Right?
Oh, wow.
And these are things, these are products that are given special IP protection because the creators of those geographical indications say that the area where those products come from give them a unique value. So in this area of trademarks and geographical indications, we are protecting brands. So I'd gone off to UK to study IP law because I didn't want to be another human rights lawyer, like a lot of the people who are coming out of school in my generation. And I thought that, that if I studied IP law and ICT law, which was it was the double barrel of my master's education, I'd have special relevance in the commercial law sector. So I finish this program and then I'm quickly back in the country. But the reality is that when I was a graduate student, is that I could see that there were not many things that we were producing here in Kenya. Unique things we were producing that were not imported that could benefit from an IP regime. So a lot of the things you would find in our supermarkets and in our shops were imports. So we're talking about the period just before Mwai Kibaki comes in. Actually, this is the period where Mwai Kibaki is in power, where there is an explosion of economic growth. The banks are starting to lend again. The economy is starting to boom, and we are launching into the growth of mega projects. So Thika Road being the first big one. Obviously, this direction of mega projects would continue with the government that came after. The casualty of big infrastructure has been production. And if production suffers, then there is very little use for IP. So I then came back into the country and immediately joined the inaugural group that was starting the law school at Strathmore. So between 2012 and now, I've been a teacher at the law school. First of all, in a full-time basis, and now in an adjunct capacity. While at Strathmore, after a few years, I left to commence my studies in my PhD in cloud computing law, and I headed off to the University of Cape Town. And while I was in South Africa, of course, the period away, I call it my period of self-exile. I have the opportunity to be away from the country and observe, now while being an adult, to observe how a different country is constructed.
Right.
The South Africans have unique problems, but also they have unique strengths, because the years where they had apartheid, the country had to be self-sustaining. So, PW Botha's government from around 1948, he institutes this system of governance of apartheid, and then the world slams the brakes on interactions with South Africa. But then South Africa says it's fine. We'll produce everything we need here. So what of course was astounding was that South Africa could produce everything it needed. And especially in the agri space, I was shocked by the level of productivity of South Africa. So the University of Cape Town is in the Western Cape, which is famous for its wine farms. It's famous for its citrus farms. It's famous for its big dairy farms. It's famous for its big pork farms. So while being a graduate student, I had in fact, I spent a considerable chunk of my time when I should have been in a library in one form of farm or the other, right? And the South Africans don't do agriculture the way we do agriculture. We do agriculture smallholder, okay? And in fact, when it's not smallholder, it's the colonial holdover of the big farms, the Del Montes, the Sassinis, etc., etc. So what you have is that you've got peasantry agriculture, which most people who are educated here are trying to run away from. So everybody wants to go to university and become an accountant, a doctor, a pharmacist, a journalist, anything other than agri-production. And then some of the country's big money is involved in sort of like big commercial production. So what you have is that the people who are peasants remain engaged in peasantry agriculture in their smallholder farms. And on the other side of the spectrum of production, you've got big, large farms. Give you the examples that come easily to mind are the Delamere farms, Del Monte, like I mentioned, Sassini Tea, etc., etc. So what you have is that you have a missing middle. You have a missing middle of Kenyans who have traveled, and Kenyans travel the world quite a bit. Kenyans who are financially literate in the sense that they can read a balance sheet, and Kenyans who can raise capital. So that missing middle is missing in the world of agri-production. It's in the service sector. And obviously because for the last 50 or so years, since we've been an independent country, 60 years, the clever thing was to align yourself and to educate your children to be of use in the service sector. What's the upshot of it? The upshot of it is that then we left core productivity to the people who are least capitalized and who have the least clear picture about the global markets. So the long-term effect of this is that your country is going to be a net producing country, number one. You're going to run short of the capacity of creating jobs, because if you don't produce, there are no jobs, and all these people you're educating for the service sector have nothing to service, right? You're going to have an imbalanced balance of trade, because Kenya has to import pharmaceuticals, it has to import cars, it has to import heavy machinery, it has to import petroleum, but also now it has to import food. And so you have an imbalanced balance of trade. You're sending off dollars to bring in edible oil. You're sending off dollars to bring in rice. You're sending off dollars to bring in sugar. You're sending off dollars to bring in onions and eggs from Kampala. So if you've got to be very rich indeed. You've got to be Saudi Arabia to be this generous with your money, to be sending it off to other people. But Kenya is not Saudi Arabia, and Kenya is not Abu Dhabi, So the upshot of this is that when Kibaki left, and we had Jubilee, which continued with the growth of mega projects, production suffered further. So my journey has been a journey of wanting to have decent work in the commercial law sector, realizing that the work in commercial law has to come from services and the production of products in the economy. And if that's not happening, then the work in commercial law shrivels. And then obviously my exposure to the behemoth of production that is the South African production industry, and a fascination that that Kenya could rediscover its way and send some of its brains and some of its capital back into production. So when I came back from South Africa, I immediately went off to do the thing that I was preaching. And I set up a farm. So I'm the founder of a commercial production unit called Chalala Farm Group, which at the time specializes in commercial pork production and commercial dairy. And then obviously, because once you get involved in the work itself of production, and not the talk of production, the actual work of production, the challenges of production become obviously clear to you. We have challenges at a technical level in terms of know-how for people. We have challenges at the level of feeds as inputs, because if the country is a net importer of maize, of soya, it means that your raw inputs are also imports into the production process.
Yeah. So sorry. So we'll get to that, because that's now what you're doing here. But Douglas, most people getting that chance where you're in South Africa, you're seeing the bars, you're seeing the opportunities there, would probably think, okay, maybe then, let me just do here, let me add value to the systems that are there. Other than, so what was it that made you, say, okay, let me try and come back and start something back home, other than, because of course there are many Kenyans who are there, who've gone there, they've tapped into the structures that are there, the infrastructure that is there, and they've decided to actually then add value to those existing structures that are there in any industry, not just agriculture. So what was the inspiration behind that?
It's a long journey. When I went to do my master's program in the UK, it was the first time I had left Africa. It's the first time I had left Kenya. And when you see London, it for the first time, being a boy from Nairobi, the sheer scale of London shocks you. If it doesn't shock you, then you're very special indeed, right? And of course, London is impressive. But then when you go to some of the other European capitals, Rome and Paris, you realize that here are people who are building for the future. They were not short term. London wasn't built for next week. It was built to stand 1,000 years, 2,000 years. So that's the first thing that happens, that I go there and I realize that the scale at which this thing has been built, it's been built long term. You've got buildings standing that are 300, 400 years old.
Correct.
And I'm coming from a place that's 100 years in terms of building. And almost everything is a startup where I'm from. But where I'm operating, I'm in a law school at the University of East Anglia. I'm in a law school that's 400 years old. The building I go every day to study is a 400-year-old building. And immediately this challenges me that how does one become the kind of person who builds things that endure? Things that last, not short term. I made some money. So this is the first thing that I'm in my early 20s, and this memory stays with me. When I then went to South Africa, I found the same, that the establishment of that country was also built to endure. Okay, the scale at which the projects were conceived and executed were built for scale and built to endure. So the marriage of the original impressions on my mind of what I saw in the UK and what I saw in the Western Cape convicted me that I would always be a bad employee. I would always be bad in employment, you see, because it didn't make sense. So I had to build my own thing, because then I could use my energy and my imagination without limit.
Correct.
Okay? So South Africa was only a phase in my life, because it's also built in a way that it's an established market. Okay, they've been building for 400 years, and they've got the right ideas. So everything I want to do has been done at a big scale. So if you're going to penetrate that market as a founder, as a builder of things, you find that the markets are mature, the value chains are owned, the supply chains are owned, and the capital has owners. You've got semblances of that problem in Kenya, but it's not a total problem. I mean, here, if you want to change a government, you change a government. If you want to raise capital, you work harder. If you want to build a business, you build a business. I mean, Equity Bank is how many years old? Family Bank is how many years old? Safaricom is 20 years old.
So it's not all doom and, there are systems that have been...
There is a vitality about being able to build things here. And the companies I'm talking about are not 25 years old. That should attract our best people back. That in Nairobi and in the region, you can build scalable businesses that are for the long term if you come with the right ideas, the right networks, and you have the acumen yourself, and if you can raise the capital. And there is an ease here of doing it that you might not find elsewhere. I'm not saying that there are no challenges, there are challenges, but the opportunity is also immense. And this is across the counters that, when James Mwangi was starting, Barclays Bank was here, Stan Chat was here, and yet now he's a tier 1 bank. I could name several companies where in my lifetime I've seen things start from small or humble beginnings and become, behemoths, right? So I was convicted that I have to finish my tour of duty in South Africa and come home and build. So obviously, teaching at the university is fantastic because every day I've worked with young people, very clever young people, who see their continent for what it is, a continent whose stories about it are misery and poverty, but also a lot of promise. And then obviously the beauty about that is that it allows you time to clarify your ideas. So I had to come back because I enjoyed the work that I did at the university, and it allowed me time while teaching to clarify my ideas about what I was going to do next. So that's why I had to come back.
Yeah. It's interesting. I was looking at some numbers. We have around 35 to 40% of our population being youth, which, that's a majority.
Yeah.
But around 10% or maybe less than 12% of that are the ones who are engaged in the labor section.
Yeah.
And just folding that up to the United Nations SDGs, we're in the decade of action. And one of them, SDG 8 is on decent work and economic growth. So take us to a point where we are looking at the opportunities. You are a young person. You learned from this particular, you went to the UK, you've been across to South Africa. You've also did a stay as well in the Netherlands as well, just to see how, farming is doing there.
Yeah.
Take us to a point where I'm a young person, right? I have all this, I want to get into agriculture or whatever it is. Where do I start? And then sort of then fold that up then to your story, because to where you're leading now, we'll talk maybe about that, where you're the chairperson of the Kasarani Pork, cooperative.
Okay.
How does that look like for somewhere, a young person in a village who wants to tap into this mega? Since school we were being told that agriculture is the backbone of our economy.
Yeah.
That has always been the case, that we've always been told. But how do they tap into that?
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I went into law because I've always been interested in public change, the capacity of law to cause public change. It's also the fact that when I was young, and we had the government of Daniel Moi, which it had major downsides, some upsides. The guys who I could see at the forefront of pushing for reform of that government, which was autocratic, undemocratic, perhaps incompetent and fairly corrupt. The guys I could see pushing that system had to change, they were lawyers. So, I remember as a young boy, Orengo at the forefront. I remember Paul Muite at the forefront. I remember, lawyers like, what's his name? Waberuga Tonye presenting the petition for Mwai Kibaki in 1997. So as a young boy, I have this sense that, lawyers cause things to happen. Okay,
Yes.
so I have to be a lawyer. You see, I have to be a lawyer. But then when Kibaki came to power, I understood that the power of lawyers was limited. Economists were quite powerful as well, because they could, if you could fix governance, then the economists could make dignified work happen if they had the right ideas. So I remember that I was very enthusiastic when Mwai Kibaki came to power, and obviously quite disappointed when things started to unravel, around the time of the post-election violence, etc., etc. But it's around this time that I started to follow David Ndii, Dr. David Ndii, who's now Economic Affairs, chair of the Council of the President of Economic Affairs, because he from an economics perspective, I think he's been very committed to the transformation of the country. So I started to follow from a distance because I read his articles every week. And I remember the first article was a criticism of the Thika Superhighway. Okay. David's very clever. And David doesn't suffer fools. Okay. If he needs to say it, he'll say it. No, I remember that article, I read it, and he was being critical of what our president, Mwai Kibaki, had done, which was to build Thika Superhighway. And then I was like, but what's wrong with this guy? But everyone can see this is a good project, right? Yeah. And the argument he was making is that, a project like this has its merits, but if you want to drive growth, if you want to drive productivity, we need to spend our money elsewhere. We need to spend our money increasing productivity at the lowest level. So I read that and I'm like, this guy is mad. Okay. But of course the trend of these big projects continues up to the point where we are now, that everyone knows the country is saddled with debt, etc., and the economy is doing quite poorly. And so I continue to read him, and then by the time I think he's writing the manifesto for ODM, I think I believe that he's right, that we've lost our way. Okay, so when I put together everything I've seen in the world and what the state of the economy looks to be, okay, by the time Jubilee is going for its second run, I'm quite convicted that the country's lost its way. So the short of it is that by the time the manifesto of the current government is written, and I think David is the architect of that manifesto, or involved heavily in the writing of that manifesto, where he proposes a focus on agri-productivity in 8 areas and in affordable housing. So there are 9 value chains that inform the manifesto of the Kenya Kwanza government. And 8 of them are in agri. And he says, look, wow, we've got a country of young people, and then we've got a country that is consuming an incredible amount of and importing those things or things it could produce. If we can just produce what we consume, we already have a domestic market. I'll give you some numbers. We are consuming about 384 billion worth of rice import. Now, for reference, the counties get about 370 billion.
Yeah, break it down for us. Right? How does that look?
Yes, the counties get an allocation of about 370 billion from national government. But then we go and import rice. Okay, so we give Pakistan and Bangladesh 384 billion. All right? I think the judiciary is sitting on 41 billion as its budget. But then we go and buy edible oil for 284 billion. We give this money to Malaysia every year, right? If you go to the scenario in sugar, it's worse. So if you put these counters together, what we are doing in rice, what we are doing in edible oil, and these are things significantly, we could produce a good chunk of this stuff here because we've got the market here. It already means that young people who want to be involved in this type of work have work. The young people who want to be involved in this kind of work have revenue. Now, we only talk about the domestic market. If you then start focusing on the export market, which means to bring in dollars by sending some of this stuff out there, you can see that the agri is very low-hanging fruit. Okay, so which are the areas where in the plan they intend to propel growth?
Yeah, and where this young person right there
Yeah.
can be able to see it as.
Yeah, I'll give you an example. The president has said it many times, and David has said it many times. Kenya's got the biggest dairy herd in Africa. We're sitting on about 3 million dairy cattle. Okay, South Africa is sitting on 1 million dairy cattle. Okay, South Africa's average productivity per dairy cow is 28 liters per animal. Kenya's average productivity is 3.2 liters per animal. Okay, our annual production of milk is 5 billion liters, of an average of 3.2 million liters per cow. Okay, now, if you want to double our productivity from 5 billion liters to 10 billion liters, all our cows have to do is move from 3.2 liters to 6.4 liters. It's hardly rocket science. That the only thing you've got to do for our dairy cows is improve the quality of fodder, not even the genetics. The cow that gives you 3 liters, if you give it better nutrition, it'll double its productivity. We'll deal with genetics later. Right? So what then have you got to do? You've got to have a national Marshall Plan for high quality fodder. What is a national Marshall Plan for high quality fodder? It's jobs for the boys, jobs for young people. Because you see, if you have the fodder, you already have the offtake because you have the animals. If you double the productivity of the animals, you double your milk productivity. What do you do with all this excess milk? You know, I think the president once said that there in our neighboring country, Congo, we've got 100 million people and they don't have a lot of milk. We'll powderize it and send it there. In West Africa, Nigeria's got 250 million people. We'll powderize it and send it there. Right now, in Ivory Coast, they're importing their milk from Belgium. You know, they're importing in Senegal their milk from France. We're sitting right here next to them. You know, they are 4 hours away. And we could easily we could triple our milk output with just a little bit of effort. And that market of 350 million people is waiting. So obviously, in the dairy sector, you ask yourself, what are our strengths? Our strengths are, the cows are here. The Kenyans love cows as much as they love their children. Now, all they have to do is to have access to high quality fodder. And if they have access to high quality fodder, you would double or maybe triple in a very short time the productivity of the dairy sector. Number one, value chain number one. You go to the next one, livestock. Our people, the Maasai, the Samburus, the Boranas, the Rendiles, the Gabra, the Turkana, they are pastoral people. They're pastoral people generally. Somali, they're pastoral people. This is what they do for a living. They've got cows, they've got a big herd of cows. But every year you have a drought. Every year you have a drought, their animals die. And we have to respond in relief efforts to stop the animals from being wiped out from the drought. In the very same time, we are 4 hours away from the biggest market for meat in the Middle East. The very same time, we are only 4 hours away from the biggest market for meat in the Middle East. And yet we've got an incredible catchment of people. They love their cows. They love their livestock. What's holding back the livestock sector? Fodder. So the thing that unlocks dairy is the thing that unlocks the livestock sector. If those communities have access to high quality fodder, the animals stop to die, and we grow the size of our livestock herd in the country. And then we go into value addition, which is abattoirs to process that meat for the Middle Eastern market. And number two, the leather sector, which more or less now, in its normal numbers, doesn't exist. Because a lot of the cows we slaughter, we don't process the leather out of them. Now, leather is a big industry. The big fashion houses of the world, in New York, in Paris, in London, and wherever, in Beijing, they'll consume all the leather you can put out because it's one of the big inputs for fashion. So this is yet another sector. But very easily, that if you could double fodder production and slaughter more cows and don't throw the leather away to be eaten by the dogs, the hides, you create more jobs for young people. Okay, so livestock subsector. Edible subsector, edible oil. What is edible oil? Edible oil is sunflower, soya, and a lot of the land that's sitting in Western Kenya, where people grow a lot of sugarcane, is very viable land for soya and sunflower. A lot of the land in Eastern Kenya, should we irrigate it properly, is very viable land for growing of soya and sunflower, indeed for orchards. So you're sitting on a country with tremendous potential. You never need to be employed by nobody if you know what you are doing. But an incredible opportunities for young people who've got energy, who've got energy to work, who have a stake in the country because they're going to give birth to children, and who, if you facilitate them well with technical skills and a bit of capital, are incredible engines of growth.
Yeah.
So with the knowledge that these things are possible, I then broke off a chunk to start working on. You see, when they say if you're going to eat an elephant, you've got to start somewhere. So why did I go into commercial pig farming? It's because while I was in the Western Cape, I would go to a farm in the Western Cape in Malmesbury called, incidentally, Chalala number 2 Piggery. So I've named my own piggery after Chalala. And David Osborne's operation is the biggest operation in Africa. He is 25% of the pork market in South Africa, and he produces about 45 million liters of milk annually. It's an incredible operation.
That's big, yeah.
So then I thought, okay, you see, I've seen what Chalala is here. Let me go and start somewhere, okay? So I came, obviously, and I started my, at that point, I wanted to call it a commercial piggery, but it wasn't a commercial piggery. It was, dabbling at the margins, okay? And now we are making a bit more progress with being a commercial enterprise. Like I said, I found the normal challenges. Feed is a problem because we haven't got enough soya. For a big chunk of last year, we didn't have enough maize for human people. I think there was a manifesto that unga will shuka. Now you can imagine if you have a problem for unga for people, what about unga for animals? You know what I mean? And poultry is unga, poultry farming is unga, dairy farming is unga, aquaculture is unga, livestock farming for feedlots is unga. And obviously in our sector, in our subsector of livestock, which is commercial pork farming, it's also unga. So you grapple with this problem immediately, that we haven't got enough maize for human people, we haven't got enough maize for animals, and animals won't take precedence to human beings. So we hope that, for instance, that we will be allowed in the short term to import yellow maize, because Kenyans don't want to eat yellow maize, so that we hope that then we'll be allowed to import yellow maize from our neighbors, Zambia, maybe Malawi, could be even South Africa, so that we can bring down the cost of animal feeds. And if you bring down the cost of animal feeds, you reduce the capitalization needed for commercial animal farming. And then you increase output in the poultry sector, dairy sector, and even in my own sector. So that was the first challenge we encountered, that you haven't got enough feed. Then in my sector specifically, you then encounter a challenge of genetics. Poultry farming and pork farming are quite unique in the sense that eventually you are selling a kilo of meat. So it's important to have an eye on how quickly you can create a kilo of meat, or how much feed, it's called a feed conversion ratio. How much feed does the animal consume to produce a kilo of meat? Because when you go to Naivas or to City Market, you say, I want a 2 kilo bird. So the question is, how much feed have you put in to produce 2 kilos of bird? Because the chick comes as a day old chick to the farmer, and then they must input feed to make it a 1.8 kilo, 2 kilo bird. Therein is the magic, that if your cost of production is low, then there is a bit of margin left for the farmer.
Correct.
So those are the challenges we then encountered. And because of those challenges, I realized that a cooperative was the only way to try and solve the tiered problems at a technical level in terms of training, at a genetics level in terms of a cooperative method of bringing in high quality genetics, and then finally being able to attract the capital into the cooperative to help young people, youthful people, women to be financialized, because a cooperative is more likely to build a track record that can be trustable with money, and therefore then advance this money to its members. And then finally, the cooperative, no, not finally, I think this is one of, second last, the cooperative is able to lobby government, especially for this kind of thing that I'm talking about, like, government, would you please allow us to bring in yellow maize so that we can fix this feeds problem? And then the cooperative is able to find markets for its members, for the produce that they have got. So while I was trying to build my own private enterprise, I realized also there was public work to do in terms of building a cooperative that does the heavy lifting of that we need to do in the public sector. What's the policy on feed going to look like? How do we bring in capital for young people and women who tend to be excluded from capital and from land ownership? And how do we fix the problem of markets for our farmers? So I then put on my hat, which was the hat I wore originally, wanting to be a lawyer involved in public change. That my public change now is the work I do at the cooperative, in talking to the private sector, talking to the to multilateral lenders, to talking to the NGOs, and then mobilizing the farmers, while at the same time running my private commercial enterprise and also being an adjunct member of staff at the law school.
All right, no, fantastic. Yeah. I mean, when I sit here, Douglas, and I listen to you, it's what you're saying about especially our young people and the opportunities that are there. It's more about what you're saying is starting with what you have.
Yeah.
Because most of them then would look at, and I'm thinking of this young man or young lady who's back there in the village, and they say, okay, we are more of it's a very small land that we have to fit. You know, we are plot-minded land. You know, we don't have even tracts of land, but you know, there's a plot that you're getting.
Yeah.
So, and I take you back just slightly to that young person who has a plot of land. For example, it's a 70 by 100, or you know, where can they start in this holistic ecosystem that we are seeing that has so many opportunities?
Okay.
Yes.
I will give you a story before I answer that question.
Yes, please.
And this is a story of a friend of mine. She's called Dr. Wanjiru Kamau Rutenberg, who started Agri-production. And Wanjiru left this country at the age of 17 to go and study in the US. And she came back when she was 25 or 26 years old. And she had finalized her PhD in political science, I think, at University of Minnesota. She was now married and had a son. So I remember I met them around 2012 when they had just come back into the country. And the reason she came back, despite having a very good job in the US, was she wanted to start a non-profit called Agri-production. And Agri-production was a non-profit for the education of girls from underprivileged backgrounds to try and get them to the best schools in the US under scholarship. And when Wanjiru got married to her husband, a good friend of mine called Dr. Isaac Rutenberg, in fact, one of my doctoral supervisors, the gifts they received for their wedding, they put it as startup money for the Agri-production to send other people's girls to school in the US. So they asked their friends in the US that, don't buy us presents. Whatever you would have given us, let's put it into the startup kitty for Agri-production. And she came, and for 4 or 5 years, she lived very small, under budget, because everything she had, she put into building Agri-production. Wanjiru is, she's a rock star, a real rock star whose conviction about what you can build is bigger than, her present reality. It's not that she's a billionaire. No. But her conviction is so powerful that it brings billionaires to her causes. So now Agri-production has gone on to do many things. She handed over leadership, another thing that doesn't happen often in our part of the world, to someone else to lead it, and she's gone on to do other things. And I want to use the story of Wanjiru to illustrate something that. In our society, there is a culture of powerlessness, even amongst people who are not powerless. There's a culture of give me, I'm still poor. Even when you have stopped being poor. And that culture of powerlessness, I don't know from where it comes from, okay? But there's a culture of, even when people have succeeded in life, they wait till very late in the day to ask, what will I contribute?
It's interesting.
So this culture that I call the culture of powerlessness, that what do I have to give? What do I have to offer? And for many people on our continent and in our country, it's something we have to try and unlearn. You've got a lot to give. When you're a young person, the first thing you have to give is your energy. And there are many people who are willing to help young people in apprenticeships, if only young people will donate their energy and their willingness to learn. Because one of the conclusions now I've come to in life is that there is no free lunch, and you've got to pay school fees. If you want to learn about commercial poultry farming,
Pay your dues.
pay your dues.
Pay your dues.
Go to somebody who's doing it and learn. Work for them, apprentice for them. If you're interested in coffee, go and learn. So assuming you've got no capital, but you've got a sound mind and you've got energy, you can always begin somewhere, because there is someone in your society doing something you would like to do. So this removes, first of all, the aspect of I have no money. Okay, it also can cure the problem of I have no training or knowledge, because where you offer your time and your energy, you can trade it for knowledge and training. And if you're a young person and you've got energy and you've got skills, you can raise capital. Of course, I think we have to do a better job in this country of seeing our young people. Our banks have to do a better job of seeing commercial enterprise that's not real estate. You see, they have to do a better job. The government has to do a better job of seeing our young people and of really turning around this thing of production. Because if we go for it in a big way, we then maximize the big dividend that we have. That dividend is young people with an ability to work many long hours and an ability to learn many things quickly. So I then say that it is true, as you say, some of us don't have plots of land. But land is not the most important factor of production. No. Entrepreneurship is. And then know-how. Only later is capital and land required. People get stuck at the land and capital issue, while even if you could have those things, but you don't know what to do, and you don't have the get up and go spirit, you're still not gonna do it. In fact, you'll blow through the money. So my view is that, no one's truly helpless unless their spirit is beaten and their imagination is beaten. And if you have access to information and you can look around and see people who are doing things that you would like to do, productive economic activity, you should always be able to offer your energy in substitution for learning, number one. Because once you have skills, it's not difficult to find work. If you have work, it's not difficult to raise capital. So obviously, while saying those things, I'm aware that we have our challenges in the country. Like I said, the lack of financing in the core productive sectors is a problem. In central Kenya, we have other bigger problems. We have problems of people who should be youthful and energetic, but their youthful energy is drained by alcohol and drugs. So, and life's already hard. But then if you load another monkey on your back, it becomes twice as difficult, right? So we've got the challenges we've got, and the most powerful ally to getting ahead is a sober mind, a determination that you're going to get forward. Because once you have a sober mind and a determination to go forward, and then clarity about what you would like to do, the world tends to conspire to make those things happen for you. So, and I call this a growth mindset. This is a growth mindset that however bad it is, tomorrow can be better. And what tends to happen is the generation that is older than you that may have the skills and the capital, often they are happy to open the door for younger people who are eager to learn, who are honest and who have integrity, and who show a real zeal to make an honest life. So, I don't have all the answers and I can't pretend to have them, but I know that there are attitudes that help people get ahead, and there are attitudes that pull people backward. So I think the biggest thing that has worked for me, personally, is that I desired deeply to create my own thing. That, I didn't, good work would be on the table. Good employment would be the table, but it wasn't for me. I said, that's for somebody else. I have not written a CV in a long time, I have to say. Yeah, I knew, no, this is not the direction I want to go in. And that doesn't mean it's been easy. It's been very difficult.
And you have to be stubborn at trying to actually get to that.
You have to be stubborn once you have clarity of vision about what you want to go. Work with the people who are doing what you want to do. Work in the industries that you want to recreate for yourself. And if you are working with the people who are doing what you want to do, and in the industry that you want to go, money is not an issue. You don't need to be paid big money, because you are really paying your dues.
Yes.
In networking, you're paying your dues in knowledge. And if you have those things and you're still youthful, when you decide to do your own thing, very few things can stop you.
So it's, as you're saying, and I'm getting it, it's about, it's a mind shift.
Yeah.
That's number one. But number two is looking at the structures that are there.
Yeah.
And seeing where you as a person, because energy is also something that you can give that a person does not have.
Yes,
it's a commodity that you
yes,
have.
Yes.
And then adding that energy as a value that you bring to the table.
Yeah.
That's very profound.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's the old have capital and no energy, and also not a lot of time. The young have energy, no capital, but a lot of time.
A lot of time.
So what you compound to get wealthy is knowledge, networks, and time. Which is why you shouldn't waste your time as a young person. It's the most important resource, more than money, time.
Yeah.
The compounding effect of time on 1,000 shillings, unbelievable.
It's quite something.
Yeah.
No, that's, it's amazing. And so you have, and I want to take it further to the pork cooperative, because that's something that I know you're very passionate about.
Yeah.
And you did say that from when you are, from your public now serving, this is really how you're serving the public. I do know that you have 200 plus farmers.
Well, just shy of.
Shy of.
Yeah.
How does that look in the beholding of the bigger things, and where that is going?
So we are sitting on a golden opportunity now, where we've been we are almost through on financing to fund what I think will be a game changer for our cooperative. You asked what next for the cooperative?
Yes, what next for the cooperative?
Yeah.
And
so we're just under 20 months old, okay? So far financed by myself and our executive team out of our pockets, which is what I was telling you, that when you want to go somewhere, you put yourself in it. I learned this from Wanjiro. You take your own resources and you put them in there. But what has that done? In a very short period of time, it's grown our membership, okay? We've just applied for some funding from the World Bank, which we have reasonable successes of scoring, reasonable chances of success of scoring. Should we score that financing, we are going to do two things. We are going to purchase some land or lease some land And I'm going to push that we build a training school and we do a model farm. Okay. The model farm will bring in genetics, leading genetics from the places where genetics are top. And we will breed these genetics so that we make available these genetics to our members. And then we are likely to sign partnership agreements with producers of feed who we trust, that they can give quality to our members. Obviously, because when you are new, you don't want to overextend yourself. So we think we can do well at training and we can do well at breeding. And you train people how to breed and to raise young animals.
Correct.
And then the young animals that we breed, we would like to offer them for a fee to our members, so that the hard work of bringing in high quality genetics, we've solved it for them. Why are genetics important? It's because we would like to cut down the period of production of a typical pork farmer, pig farmer in the country, from 7 or 8 months to 5.5, 6 months. In doing so, we will effectively have put money in their pocket. So if we score this financing, which, I think reasonably we are going to score this year, we will build this training school so that you take somebody out of school, you teach them the ABCs of husbandry, of animal care, and of feeding. Then you give them good genetics, even as a loan. And then we partner with a feeds manufacturer who adheres to our standards of quality. Because we don't want to partner with people who don't see that quality is integral to the production process. You see, it has to be a partner who believes in agri, with their feeds, the way we believe in the genetics of the animals, so that once the farmer has those genetics and has quality feed, they're almost guaranteed that they're going to produce a quality product that can go to market within the time that they make money. This is my goal for the cooperative for this year. And one says you speak it to God's ears, then you let it be. Okay,
for sure.
We've obviously done the work of putting up the structures, having the cooperative registered. So it's now registered under the state Department of Cooperatives. So we've done that work. We've got traction about what we've been able to achieve so far, so that the season of luck, if you can call it that, finds us on our way. It didn't find us in bed. It found us on our way towards somewhere. You know what I mean? So I think that's what happens from a public perspective. Then obviously, from my own private perspective, is that I continue to build the enterprise from strength to strength, and with a lot of authenticity and credibility to the farmers, because I tell them the problems we are solving with the cooperative are problems I have at my farm. My medium term is just to do this over the next 5 years. Yeah.
And that places very, very well in terms of, we talk about zero hunger, which is SDG number 2.
Yeah.
And food security is one of them.
Yeah.
Sustainable agriculture is one of them.
Yeah.
And accessing, the right tools and the right mediums to actually achieve that is quite something.
Yes.
What challenges right now where we are or where you are do you envision? Because challenges doesn't mean that they have to be long lasting.
Yes.
And how then do you envision to, tackling them? Of course, one, you're saying is financing, you're talking to different partners. How do you envision that?
So, so challenge is one thing, opportunity another. So,
for sure.
I always prefer start with the opportunity.
Yes.
When last I spoke to Dr. Ndi, we had a simple model, which was this. We can produce, you see, a sow, which is a female pig, gives birth twice a year and can produce a litter of about 25 piglets, if you know what you're doing, all right? So if you have one female pig at the beginning of the year, at the end of the year you can have 25 pigs. So it multiplies your capital 25 times, almost.
Right. Yeah.
And it, you know, in 6 months, it's born at about 1.8 kilo, and it in 6 months, it can be 100 kilos. Which means that if you want to solve the hunger problem, you know, the meat quality problem, you don't solve it through beef. Because beef takes at least 14, in our case, 24 months to produce before you slaughter an animal. You slaughter pork in 6 months if you're doing it well. In the Philippines, they do it in 4.5. So the animals that can solve your meat problem are fish, chicken, and pork. And if you look at the big countries, Japan, China, where they've got big populations,
Yes.
these are the animals that are consumed most widely. Beef is high end.
It's a run rate product.
Run rate product,
Yeah.
right? Whereas in Kenya, beef is cheaper than chicken, right? Whereas in Kenya, you know, fish is more expensive than the beef is more expensive than fish. You know what I mean? Obviously, because we are not accounting for the actual production cost of beef. The people who are producing it are not accounting for its actual cost. The people who produce poultry, broilers, they know the cost. Their chickens are going to go to market at day 35 or day 42, end of story. The guys in tilapia know this tilapia must be ready for market inside 6 or 7 months, right? In commercial piggery, we're telling you this product has to be on the shelves in 6 months' time. The guys in beef aren't doing it. However, the guys in beef are the ones sitting on a premium product, not us. We are sitting on a product that can feed our people mass market, which and you know, it means that you could possibly sell a kilo of pork for 450 shillings. Okay, whereas now beef is at 800, and you could fetch 1,500 in the international market for a kilo. You're never going to fetch 1,500 for a kilo of pork in our domestic market or the international market, but you can fetch that for beef. So you see, part of solving this hunger problem, which is also a public health problem, is the quality of the protein that's available, okay? Fish, poultry, and pork. Say pork is controversial because of religious reasons, but for those for whom it is not controversial, if it's available at $4, okay, or $3.50, more people can afford it. That has an impact on public health, because if young children are eating high quality protein, if expectant mothers are eating high quality protein, we are getting healthier babies. So we reduce our public health bill. And then if the big consumption of our meats is fish, poultry, and pork, then let's take our beef and send it to Abu Dhabi. You see, because they're going to pay us a premium for our beef. So that in our counters that bring revenue, we've got a counter for horticulture, we've got a counter for tea, we've got a counter for coffee. We need to have a big counter for beef, which we send there because that's the stuff they like to eat, okay? Beef and goat meat. So if we do that, we'll solve at home the problem of hunger by producing cheaper meat, okay, and quality meat. And then the meat that we've been eating cheaply and for which we could fetch a higher price, we send it to those guys with big dollars, because you know in Saudi Arabia, you take a fork and you dig around, you hit a well. So if we could just, you know, transition it that way, that we take our ranching more seriously and our pastorally more seriously, and a lot of this meat we send it off to the premium markets, and then we feed our people on high quality protein, lots of milk, as I said, it's part of the plan, lots of high quality fish, lots of high quality poultry, lots of high quality pork for those who can eat it. What you're doing now, you're lowering your public health bill, because a lot of the people in this country, they don't die from diabetes. The people in the rural areas, it's malnutrition. You see what I mean? Those of us in the city who are dying from heart disease and etc. They are in the rural areas.
Yes.
It's cholera, malaria, malnutrition, and therefore, if we can improve the cost of, if we can improve the affordability of our meat, our protein, and we can make it more easily available, we can lower our public health bill. So there are unintended consequences of investing in this space. So the opportunity obviously is that we could invert our production model, eat less beef, eat more chicken and fish, export more beef, and obviously process more leather. If we attack this ecosystem seriously, we'll have a more prosperous country. We'll have more youth in employment and more entrepreneurs in the agri space.
So, I mean, agriculture then is a solution for a sustainable future.
Dynamite. Agriculture is dynamite. It's dynamite because what do you need? You need energy, which young people have, technical skills, young people are trainable, and just a little bit of capital. And the market's already there, whether domestic, regional, or international, right? No one needs a degree to farm chicken. No one needs a degree to farm fish, right? No one needs a degree to farm pork. And even if you need to train them, it's short courses. And off you set them to be useful to themselves and to their nation.
And leads to my last question: Do you consult? Do you give services for towards consultancy in terms of someone who wants, maybe I'm planning to go into pig farming. I have probably a piece of land. Do you do that?
Any day, any time. Obviously, time's my enemy now. I have many things to do, but I have consulted on occasion, and obviously I hope that once and obviously my time is sold for money.
Sure.
But I hope that with the cooperative I can democratize it. That it's not a thing that needs money. That there is a training school there, and we put in the infrastructure to be able to train really as a free service, so that we get on with it, right? So I am happy to pass on what I know. For private clients, obviously those are consultancies, but for the cooperative, I intend that the training will be a CSR function of the co-op. That it's not something that we charge people for, really. Yeah.
Any last words?
The 8 value chains of Kenya Kwanza's government, they'll be transformational for those people who seize those opportunities. Obviously, the Kenya Kwanza government itself has to be serious about the fantastic plan that they've got to bring it down to the ground and get young people to embrace it and make it their own. But, there is an incredible amount of skepticism about the country, about whether we can turn it around. And it's obvious that it can be turned around. And those value chains, to restate, are in dairy, they're in edible oil production, they are in textiles, they are in blue economy, which is blue economy and fisheries, they're in agroforestry, they're in horticulture, they are in tea, there is livestock and leather, and then finally affordable housing. So if you don't want to build houses, keep some chicken. If you don't want to keep some chicken, keep some fish. If you don't want to keep some fish, grow some soya. If you want to grow some soya, grow some sunflower. If your daddy has some tea, manage the tea. If your mommy has some coffee, manage the coffee, right? So there's opportunities right, left, and center if you will get out of bed.
Thank you, Douglas.
Thank you.
For such a refreshing conversation.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right.